What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode, Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. Go follow me if you're not. I'm sorry, I hit live and I didn't set my mic up right. It was all the way in the corner, so hopefully we're all good. But go follow me at Kojak Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. I'm verified on Twitter, so if you see that blue check, you know it's really me. Go follow me there. And if you want to support the show, I got Venmo and Patreon and stuff like that. And that's it. Yeah. So go do that. Leave a review, follow or subscribe to me on YouTube, please. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. It's my little goal for my podcasting career. I'd be thrilled. So if you could do that, if you're on YouTube, Dave, dude, I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you're doing well, buddy. Thanks for coming in, dude. You're the first one. Rosalind. Oh my gosh. All my favorite people. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Oh my God. And Sir Tim is here as well. What's up, dude? Let's go. So I'm so excited for this. Like the first episode, it was like, it was still interesting, but this episode blows that one out of the water. It's so awesome. So I don't care about everything that's going. It's that FTX though. I think I talked about like with Billy and stuff like that. Dude, I don't know if you guys have, so FTX crypto company, billions of dollars, was funneling money into Ukraine and then laundering it or vice versa, laundering it back to the DNC. And, but that guy, he's been like such an idiot, dude. It's so funny. Like, in the 80s, right? Like we think Wall Street, the movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko, Greed is Good. It's these total like alpha, like coke fiend, just nut jobs, right? Like these like cool guys, for a lack of a better term, right? Like though they're corrupt and crooked, like Wall Street bros, right? And then 20 or 40 years later, they're committing fraud back in the 80s, but 40 years later, you got the same kind of thing, except total dorks are doing it. And it just says to me, again, like the world has taken this, or America has taken this insane approach of letting the weak lead. It's wild, dude. It's wild. So it's just funny, but he's responding to all these reporters without a lawyer on Twitter DMs, which they obviously publish. Not that their actual reporters are going to write anything good, but that just whole situation is just so messed up. And I feel so billions of dollars regular people like you and me lost. Dude. But it's just, I find it like funny though, that it went from like Wall Street finance bros to this like overweight, like gross nerd, who it's just like the CIA is really fallen, dude. They used to have some like pretty good guy. Oh, Skeptic says he has to be on the spectrum. Dude, he's so weird. And I don't know if you, last thing about FTX, because I'm not a crypto guy really, but he's also, all of those people in Silicon Valley, they all take Adderall, abnormal amount or huge doses of Adderall, which there's an Adderall shortage. So they're probably hurting, but he was taking these patches that I forget what the drug's called. I think it's like for like, it's like for something very basic, but there's an off label for it. It's like a stimulant, or it's like, it wakes you up. And maybe it's not really a stimulant, but it has a similar effect. It's like a safer Adderall, I guess, a less methamphetamine, less methy Adderall. And he was on those, but just crazy, dude. Our world, just crazy. But so last episode, we were talking the pirates, and we didn't really get into much of pirates last episode. We were talking more Templars and how they got chased out of France, and they had this whole fleet of ships that went away. And these fleet of ships was the ones that started the skull and crossbones on their flag. And this was because, there's a few stories why. No, it wasn't Dramamine Skeptic. It's something I've never heard before. It's like a patch. And I probably bookmarked it to look. And I know my drugs pretty well, and I've never heard of this drug before. So, but it's very off label. You're not supposed to do this, but he was doing it for energy. But yeah, last episode we talked about how the French king, he kicked out the Templars and their whole fleet went missing, and they went underground. They went to Scotland. They went to Spain. They went to Italy, Germany. They became the Teutonic Knights, or they infiltrated the Teutonic Knights. In our previous books, we talked about how now I have two authors that are both older authors that have mentioned that the Templars were the real OG secret society of Babylon, of Phoenicia, and it was the continuation of that. And both these authors say that they created Freemasonry as a cover. So I kind of like, I'm fully in that theory now. All the books that like talk about the Freemasons, it's like Templars, all Templars are Freemasons, but not all Freemasons are Templars kind of deal. And I know there's exceptions to this rule, but yeah. So the Templars got kicked out, and that's where we're going to pick up our story, is after they got kicked out. And I'm just trying to look over my notes real quick. Spain, they're the first ones. So this episode, we don't get into Chris Columbus. That's the next episode, but this one's just as good. So we're just going to start. So I wanted, this really should be in the first episode, but I ran out of time. But the Buccaneers, I never knew anything what a Buccaneer was besides the football team. But so there is King Francis of France. He should probably not named himself that. Was a rival with King Charles of Spain. They both ascend to the throne in 1515, and Charles of Spain also becomes Emperor of Germany 3 years later. And Francis says, "I will destroy this empire." So he starts attacking these imperial armies of Spain, and he starts a war in Italy with the Habsburgs. And meanwhile, the French pirates, though, they're crossed the Atlantic and they entered the Caribbean. And both Euro companies had to cross the Strait of Florida, which was a bitter battle between Spain and France. And this became the breeding ground of pirates from every type, patronized by the French crown. And what's so important to like grab about, and their base was Haitian island of Tortuga, hence why Haiti was controlled by France for so long, where pirates were called buccaneers or buccaneers because of their method of preparing and roasting meat. And I'm sure I brought this up last episode, but these pirates, buccaneers, corsairs, which we'll get into this episode, all these groups, they're not part of the government, they're not part of the crown, but they're funded by the crown. And so it just reminds me of all the mafia or hitmen or serial killers or cartels, all this tactic of funding like a rogue group that you don't have on paper you don't have ties to, but you do, is so it's nothing new. And I know I always say like, oh, it just keeps repeating itself, but it does. History, it's just so similar. They can't think of new ideas. They just do the same things and just change like the propaganda to it. But anyway, so Charles V of Spain, he defeats the French armies in Italy. He takes Francis prisoner in 1525. And the King Francis says, "Oops, I'm so sorry. I'll never do that again." And he stopped fighting wars against Spain, but he kept his pirates in the Caribbean. And he armed and financed every buccaneer who wanted to practice piracy in the name of France. He invested money to improve their ships, strengthening the pirate colonies of Tortuga and other islands of the Caribbean. And again, I just find that hilarious, dude. Like supporting criminals that are going to be robbing these other countries. It's just, you see these similarities today, right? They're the exact same things that they do today. Skeptic says, "I asked a pirate why he was steering wheel in his pants. And he said, 'Oh, it's driving me nuts.'" Nice. I was thinking about, so I'm going on a tinfoil hat, like in December, doing this topic. And I think I'm going to look real quick, like, is there any deep sales on pirate Halloween costumes, be memorable. So when people that don't listen to my show see me, they'll be like, "Who's this guy? He's dressed up like a pirate." But anyway, financed all those people. Buccaneers became a force. They sacked some ports in the Puerto Rico, attacking Havana, Colombian. And then there was this French Freemason, the Count Roberval, armed his own fleet to cross the Atlantic, sack more Spanish places. And most of these Spanish settlements, they wouldn't resist. I mean, they're enslaved by Spain. Why are they going to protect their stuff? But what they would do is just travel inland. And so none of the Buccaneers or ever would really go in deep. So they would get some little change, some stuff they couldn't grab at the last second. But it wasn't anything huge. But Spain, though, they keep getting attacked, right? They are the guys with all the cash, and they just keep bumping up their, like, the guarding of their ships. And eventually Spain, they said, "We're getting robbed so much." They said, "That's it. We're doing 2 crossings a year. And the departure date was guarded in absolute secrecy because they just were getting robbed constantly. They needed to stop it somehow, and that's the way they do it. So the Huguenots and the Templars. I've talked about the Huguenots a lot. Just for you guys, if you don't know what the Huguenots are, they were the supposedly, quote unquote, most probably were Protestants in southern France that were just getting obliterated by the Catholics. They eventually go to England, they leave England, they go to America. But the Huguenots are cover. The Knights Templar, dude, their like fingers or whatever, their tentacles run so deep in all these organizations that a lot of Templars became Huguenots, or they controlled the Huguenots. Maybe they had a leader there and they'd smash them again. They'd fight them against the Catholics. And why would the Templars do this? They hated the Catholic Church, was their enemy. So they used every tactic they could, playing both sides against the middle. And also in this same area the Huguenots were in France, the Cathars were located as well. Ironically, who are the Cathars? Well, we talked about them before. The Cathars are this Gnostic group that orgies. They're Templars, pretty much. They're Gnostic. They worship the same Gnostic religion. They're devil worshippers that the Catholic Church did eventually like wipe them out with one of the Crusades. But the Cathars are in the Da Vinci Code, the Priory of Sion, that Jesus had a bloodline, and all those things like that. And so the Huguenots, the Cathars, they're both basically fronts for Templar religion, basically. And the Templars, they infiltrated Calvinism. They infiltrated the Protestants, the Huguenots. And this is why there were so many wars between the Huguenots and the French Catholics in the 16th century. And it wasn't because it was because the Templars were playing both sides against the middle, And Vatican initiated the Counter-Reformation, which started massacring the Huguenots. And that's when they became to seek refuge in America. Huguenots also became pirates in the Caribbean. And again, this just leads to the theory that most of these Huguenots weren't really Huguenots. They were Templars in disguise. And this is the last thing before we get into the real pirates and stuff like that. So the Huguenots, they start these like pirate kingdoms, Tortuga on Haiti, and they formed this like pirate society, and it's the most libertarian society. But these are the rules. And so now listen to these rules of these pirate colonies, these Huguenot pirate colonies, and tell me what it sounds like to you. So they banned zero prejudice, race, nationality, or religion. Okay, that's fine. Island belongs to all members equally. No one may hold individual property on it. Okay, so you own nothing, but you will be happy. The Brotherhood will not interfere with any personal freedom, and they will defend that freedom at all costs. Well, freedom to do what? Well, if you can do anything as long as you're not hurting another, sounds kind of like a degenerate America. No one is obligated to participate in a pirate expedition, and brothers are free to leave the Brotherhood at any time. They also established rules for dividing the booty. Yes, Skeptic says dirty pirate commies. Exactly, dude. That's exactly what they were. And that was really all I wanted. Spain. That's all I really wanted to. Eventually, Henry II, successor Francis I, withdrew all support of the Protestant buccaneers of the Caribbean. And instead, he starts sending his quote-unquote explorers to find new land in America and Canada, which failed. So he went back to South American focus. They tried to take Brazil with 200 people. Portugal whoops them. And by the end of the 16th century, the buccaneers are done for. France decided to focus on the old world. And now this is where we get into the fun, amazing stuff that blew my mind, because I've heard all these names that I'm going to mention. You probably heard these names that I'm going to mention. And in history class, I don't remember what they did before this episode, but you think of them as explorers. And by golly, they are not explorers, right? So Francis Drake. And I have no idea what Francis Drake looks like. So we're going to pull up a picture of Francis Drake. Let's see. You're going to have a funny outfit, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's just so everybody can see what Francis Drake looks like. Here's good old Francis Drake. Sir Francis Drake. Let me get this correctly. He's got a funny mustache for people. Very curly hair, it looks like. So, all right. Okay. So, and here's his path. We're going to get into this, but he traveled from South America. Instead of going over the Atlantic, he crossed through the Pacific and came all the way back home around Africa, back up but this is going to come into play very big. Okay, so Francis Drake. So in 1560, you have merchants that are smuggling slaves between Africa and the Americas. Now, the reason why you had smugglers doing this wasn't because slavery was illegal, was because the House of the Indies had rules. And the rules was you had to get a license, or a license, a permit to be able to be a slave merchant. And the only way you got this would had to be administered from the house of the trade slavers. Shockingly, I know this isn't gonna blow anybody's mind, but it was a very corrupt organization. No way. They deal in human trafficking. They're corrupt. What? No way. And they held a total monopoly on who could be a slave merchant, but America needs slaves, hence the smuggling. And people were paying good money for these smuggled slaves from Africa. So whenever you have a need, black market usually will fill these roles. And so these smugglers of slaves actually were like, you could buy stock. All right, my gum is. So you could buy stock in their slave trading companies, which is crazy. They're smuggling merchant companies. Now, what does this have to do with our story, right? What does slave trading and them having stock in these companies have to do our story? Well, maybe you heard of this one lady comes into play pretty importantly in this slave trade. Her name is Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen. Now, she ascended in 1550. I always do this. Let's just pull up Elizabeth I. Because her and Francis are going to have some. Oh, yeah, I can see why Francis Drake definitely dug her. Who painted these things? I mean, this looks ridiculous. She looks like, it looks crazy. She's got curly red hair. Oh my gosh, she looks like an egg. Weird. Not the look I'd go for, but okay. So just so we pull this up. So Elizabeth I, how is she involved in all of this? Well, so she ascends in 1558, and wouldn't you know, she had some shares in these merchant smugglers' ship. So there's this guy, Hawkins. He's the captain of a ship. He doesn't work for the government technically, but it didn't stop him from firing cannons, weapons, guns on local governors who tried to impede his smuggling of slaves. And so the reason why he was able to fire cannons at governors of islands and things like that was because he had the backing of the crown, because he would pay a portion of what he made each year to the crown, which was probably a boatload of money to allow him to do all this stuff. Now, some people will defend the queen and say possibly she didn't know. Does she manage her finances? No. But regardless, she had shares in Hawkins's and other slave merchants' companies. So in 1567, Hawkins's third voyage, he takes his nephew. And who is Hawkins's nephew? Well, none other than Francis Drake. And Drake, he'd been smuggling things for some years, despite he's only 30 years old at the time. And eventually, Drake and Hawkins get in beef with Spain, cannons, fighting, violence all over. Eventually, they get surrounded, their ships. Everyone dies, but somehow Hawkins and Drake escape alive. But the die had been cast. Drake was going to be a pirate. He loved the pirate life. For me, he was the pirate in the Caribbean. He was the Jack Sparrow. Macman, that's so funny. He said using Johnny Depp's maps, I believe. And I just mentioned Jack Sparrow. So that's funny. But Francis Drake, he was such a good pirate. The King of Spain, Philip II, offered 20,000 ducats for his head. That's how much Francis Drake was a pirate. Now, what do I remember from Francis Drake in learning about him in history class? That he was an explorer. He circumnavigated the globe, the first one to do it. I did not think, oh, he's a pirate. And I don't think they even teach that stuff. But he eventually heads back to England. He helps the English fight the Irish. He gets presented to the Queen as one of these best young captains. And the Queen, she's single. Macman said John D's maps, I believe. Macman, I'm sorry. I thought that said Johnny Depp. And I don't know about John D's maps, but we are going to get into that in a second, Macman. In 1 second, we're going to talk about that. But so she's the Queen's single, the Virgin Queen. She's 37. Francis Drake, he's a bad boy, right? He's like the Fonzie of the 1580s, 1570s. And he's around the same age. And they what you can imagine, right? These are both two very famous, powerful people. They respect each other. So she was called the Virgin Queen for a reason. She remained single. She was 37. She turned down suitor after suitor. And now this cannot be proven. This is gossip and rumor, but they hooked up. They absolutely hooked up. Francis Drake and the Virgin Queen got it on. And that part obviously I can't prove, but what is known by the letters and things like that is that they respected the hell out of each other. And I wrote this note and I deleted it, but I'm going to say it anyway. Women, please take no offense to this, but men, how do I say this? Did he respect her or was he trying to bang her? Right? You understand what I'm saying. Okay. You get, I don't need, how do I ever, you get what I'm saying. I don't need to elaborate on this. So Drake told the Queen that he's going to sail for the South Pacific and attacking the Spanish colonies on the South American coast. So the Queen, she gives him 5 ships. And in 1577, he sailed straight for the strait that Magellan had discovered in 1520. And his ships gradually left him over the long journey. He eventually ends up with his only ship, his flagship, left under his command, and he changes his plans. He says, instead of attacking the colonies, I'm going to go after merchant ships leaving those places. Francis Drake, dude, captures, he is destroying Spain. Like I said, they hated him. He captures the most heavily armed, which also had the most amount of wealth, gold and silver and all that stuff of the Spanish squadron. It was gold ingots, silver coins, chests full of pearls, jewelry at a value of $150,000 in those days. So God knows how much money that is today, a boatload of money. And he knew this. So he hits the Spanish ship. He says, all right, I know they're going to catch me. Like they're waiting for me on the way back when I get back to England. They're going to be sitting there waiting to steal it. So he says, I'm going to go to Europe through the Pacific. And in July 1579, he starts drawing cartographical outlines of the islands and coasts and establishing relations with local rulers. And he basically lays the basis or the groundwork for the English commercial empire that would be established a century later. Something that Drake may have made it all the way up the California coast. Dude, I would not doubt it. I wouldn't, because, well, I'll just keep going, but that's very interesting. So 3 years later, that's how long it took him, like a 5-year journey. 3 years later, he arrives back in England with all the gold, more booty from other ships, and the Queen met him at the dock. Would the Queen meet some regular pirate at the dock unless they were banging? No, they would. I don't think she would. I think she looked like an egg. She can't leave her house. She's going to crack. She looks like Humpty Dumpty. So she met him there, gives him a big kiss. I'm just joking. She knights him, though, on the spot. And Edwin Drake, he is officially the most lucrative, not a pirate, Corsair for England. And he is the first to circumnavigate the globe. He's the pioneer cartographer of the South Seas, supposedly. That's what history will tell you. But he is supposedly the first to circumnavigate the globe. And his career didn't even end there. 1585, he sets out for the Caribbean again, this time with 25 ships, taking the island of Santo Domingo. On this return trip, he brings the first samples of tobacco and potatoes back. He defends the English Channel against the Spanish using pirate tactics, such as sending small boats with flaming coal tar to the hulls of enemy ships. And he went on one last trip with his uncle Hawkins in 1595. They both die, uncle in battle, him of malaria. But when he died, bells rang in Spain. That's how annoying this guy was to them. And we're going to get into the cool map part very soon about how he got back and all that stuff. But I just picked a few of the pirates that I wanted to talk about because they're so, if you were like the pirates, get the book because they go over all these different ones. But I just wanted to do one more. So Henry Morgan, Captain Morgan, right? Like everyone knows Jack and Coke. And this is named after Henry Morgan. And Henry, obviously, you think of the rum, but he was a real guy born in 1635 into a respected family, joins the army. He's supposed to take the island of Hispaniola from Spain. He loses, so he heads to Jamaica to join a commodore on some pirate things. And on this travel, they stole 22 chests filled with silver from merchant ships. and he eventually becomes the captain of a ship in 1663, having an agreement with the crown to act as a pirate. Just again, insane that like these, it's like the Wild Wild West on the seas out there. These crowns are funding thieves, and not that they're not thieves themselves, but so this is the funny story. So Morgan, he hits this town that's loaded, and he gets chased down by Spain. They burn his ships. So he steals 4 more ships and attacks the ships that attacked his ships that stole back these huge like chests of silver. He gets back that loot plus more, and he even gets some more ships, and he goes home filthy rich to the crown. His legend is heard worldwide. Books. And that was another thing that was really big, was all these like Drake and Morgan and these Corsairs of the 16th and 17th century. Pop culture loved them. They would write books about them and stories about them and told the little kids, and kids wanted to be like in this time period, Corsairs. That was the cool thing to do. Propaganda, right? And because the queen, she doesn't care if you live or die, but if you do make it and you're able to steal that wealth, she's not going to say no. So Morgan had admiration from the British and hated by Spain, and peace eventually ensued with Spain and Britain, or in England. And Morgan took his chance. He said, all right, I'm done with the pirate life. The pirate life is not for me anymore. He buys 800 acres in Jamaica and moves his family. And it's still today known as Morgan's Valley in Jamaica. But he gets called out of retirement. Spanish Corsairs are marauding the coast, and he gets crowned captain of all the ships on the island of Jamaica in 1670. He had 38 ships, 2,000 men, and the Spanish, they just back up. And the Spanish governor of the island of Jamaica, he wants to prove to Spain that he's a good governor. He can take it back from this guy. So he has this glorious idea, the governor of Jamaica. He takes 2 huge herds of cattle, and he says, I'm going to cause a stampede, and that's going to scare Henry Morgan. So he tries to release them to go chase him down. Embarrassingly, they go the other way. They run the opposite direction. He's humiliated and embarrassed. He tries to set fire to the city before abandoning it. And but regardless, Morgan was successful in defending. In England, they're still trying to keep the peace. They required Morgan to return for 2 years to England as like punishment, to say to the Spain, like, no, look, we didn't actually tell him to do this. He did it on his own. We're going to punish him for you. But they knight him when he comes back. They make him governor of Jamaica. And just like in our world, alliances had changed at this point. Politics had changed. And he dies at 52, 10 years as governor on his plantation. And I just like that story. And there's so many pirates we could go on. There's girl pirates, Calico Jack and Mary Read. She knew this guy, Captain Kidd, who's very important to our story. And so we were talking the maps in the chat. So this is now we're going to start this is where we start. We had to do Drake because he's very important to our story. And Morgan, I just wanted to because I thought of Captain Morgan. But so Captain Kidd, he's another Corsair for the British. He captures a merchant ship, becomes his flagship. And in 1698, he receives an ancient map from a mysterious passenger. And on this map shows a small island with a Templar cross drawn on its interior. The map owner assures Kidd that the cross marked the treasure of the Templars. And from this moment on, all Corsairs began searching for what they deemed Captain Kidd's treasure. It became a book, Treasure Island. The Order of the Temple, the Templars, sometimes acting under Freemasonry, the order paid huge sums to try and hire the greatest pirate captains who were also Freemasons, who are most likely Templars, to try and find this treasure. So Francis Drake, how does he relate to this? Well, Francis Drake is related to the word dragon, the mythical beast that was one of the Templars' emblems. And it's also said his successful circumnavigation was able to be possible, not because he was a great captain, which he was, but because he was in possession of ancient Egyptian and Chinese maps that belonged to the Templars. And another story, this is the craziest story that I've ever heard. So there was that love affair that we talked about between Drake and the Queen of England. It resulted in a son who was raised by a guy by the name of Sir Nicholas Bacon. Now, you may know that last name, but you may not know the first name. Well, when this young man being raised by Sir Nicholas Bacon, when he came of age, this man, Nicholas, gave him a sealed coffer with the legacy of his father. And the son was obviously none other than Francis Bacon, the great philosopher who created Rosicrucianism, who probably created Freemasonry or helped push it out to get it into the mainstream. He possibly wrote Shakespeare, possibly being one of the most wizard-like people to ever exist. And just so Macman says, John Dee and the Empire of Angels, the book, John Dee was the mastermind of Drake's Voyage. Very interesting. And I'm going to check that book out, Macman, because I love learning about John Dee. But that's kind of what this is saying too. That doesn't seem too far out. It's kind of what they said is that Drake was in possession of ancient maps. So your book says that there were John Dee maps. This one says it was possibly Egyptian or Chinese maps. So clearly, I think we could all agree that Francis Drake had access to information that was not readily available to your normal captain or pirate. But I found that very interesting that he clearly was a part of a secret society. If he was a Templar, I don't know, but I would guess he was. But the fact that Drake and the Queen had a child who turned out to be Francis Bacon. And shortly before Francis Bacon's death, he wrote the book New Atlantis, which is about, now, what is this? What we just talked about, these pirate kingdoms and what their rules were. Well, New Atlantis, what is that about? Well, it's about a social but scientific utopia where they have inventions that would occur centuries later in this book, an imaginary nation organized around spiritual values. Now, were these prophecies of the Templar legacy or Francis Drake? Was it just a fictional story that Francis Bacon wrote? Or was the society with the name, quote unquote, New Atlantis, the Arcadia the Templars had hoped to establish in the New World? Because we talked about, and this book was published a year after his death, but we talked about this last episode. The Templars, when they left France, their goal was to start this perfect Gnostic utopian world. We talked about the Essenes a few episodes ago, and the Essenes were this pre-Christ secret society, religion that were communistic in nature. They shared wives, they shared everything. They had no rulers, they had no rules, they were degenerates, and this is what the pirate kingdoms start at. So you can see, what are the odds that all these secret societies and these groups of people all believe these same ideas are the way to save the world? I think they're pretty high. Unless they're the same ideals that are just repackaged and put into different groups. And wouldn't you know, Henry Morgan, our boy, that Henry Morgan, the rum guy, he was a leader of a Freemasonic lodge. He subsidized Masonic brothers, captains, such as Captain Kidd, another Freemason Corsair. So you have Francis Drake, you have Captain Kidd, and Henry Morgan, some of the most popular, famous explorers who were really pirates, all breaking ground and finding new land, new routes, new whatever. And they all are a part of Freemasonry at the minimum, at the maximum, Rosicrucian, Knights Templar members. And Captain Kidd, he might have gotten his Oak Island. Well, this is the story that, so Macman says John Dee. So here's the story how Captain, so I guess not, you were talking Francis Drake, but the story of how Captain Kidd got his Oak Island treasure map was that his patron, the Duke of Belmont, came from a French family who started the Templars. Oh, French families. Who were the French families that started the Templars? Powerful French families. So this powerful Frenchman who has a long line of power in France, whose family was possibly of Templar origin. He was called in Beaumont in France, Belamonte in Italy and Spain. And this was supposedly where Captain Kidd got his treasure map from. So these are the links that tie what's the link that tie pirates and the Templars the closest? Was it all these maps? Kind of, but it was also the Joyeux Roger, or the Jolly Roger. This was the flag, the Skull and Bones flag that was hoisted on Templar ships after their dispersion. And the symbol was an ancient talismanic sign that the temple adopted as a symbol for its fight against the Vatican. And so, as well as other Corsair ships hoisting the flag, they were attacking Spain, which was so you can't say like, oh, all pirates were Templars. No, absolutely not. All of them pretty much had the Jolly Roger, whether they knew why they did that or not. But the reason why they probably propaganda, et cetera, et cetera. But the Templars were using that symbol to say we're attacking the papacy. All of these pirate ships all attacked Spain. Who is Spain? Spain's closest to the Catholic Church at this time. They're spreading Catholicism all over the world. And so by attacking Spain, they know they're hitting the papacy because Spain is definitely giving boatloads of their cash to the papacy. And so the golden age of piracy corresponded not only with the Templars, but also with the emergence of the British Empire and capitalism. I feel like I'm flying through this, dude. But anyway, all right. We did the Templar, Son and the Virgin Queen. Okay. So the big things from this, all these pirates, they're all Freemasons at minimum, at maximum. There's something else, Templars most likely, and probably the Queen of England and Francis Drake had a kid, and that was Francis Bacon. But the 17th century, things are starting to change, okay? They're getting more mature. We can't just be pirates all the time. And the 17th century, they openly encouraged these pirates. The crown taking a cut, using them as irregular combatants in its wars against Spain and France, much like how the United States, CIA, MI6, Mossad created ISIS, much like how we created all of these terrorist groups. We funded them, gave them weapons, and then they became when it was convenient, they became our enemy. But when we were using them to fight an enemy. So this was the exact same concept that pirates are. They're just this terrorist group being funded by the crown. In our case, it would be like America funding ISIS. But in the 18th century, these power countries were able to push piracy to the margins. So arose from this was the expeditions of the Royal Navy and merchant fleets that served the growing trade of the East and the West India companies. And so remember I said this propaganda was so powerful. It was promoting these pirates. It was promoted like these guys are heroes. They're explorers. They're bringing pride to our country. Everything switched in the 18th century. In 1707, England and Scotland united under a treaty forming the United Kingdom of Great Britain. And the colonized territories discovered or captured North America, the West Indies, South Pacific. The British imperialism required they started getting involved with this now. Prior to this, Britain in the 16th century, 17th century, they were more just funding these pirates. They weren't really colonizing places besides India. They were not like Spain was real and Portugal were really the two big guys on exploring the New World. But that everything changed. Once England and Scotland joined forces, they didn't have to worry about fighting their neighbor anymore. They could set this new focus on becoming like Spain and getting all these little colonies. But the issue with that is you can't have a pirate going to colonize this third world country. Well, I don't know if they had that phrase then, but you can't have like a pirate like Jack Sparrow being like, see, we're the good guys. We're spreading democracy and capitalism. We're not robbing them blind from resources. They want us here. So you need to have a little bit better of an image. And that's also why they got rid of the pirate image. They didn't want that anymore. They wanted a respected naval commodore or whatever that would take control and be like, no, he's not a pirate. He's a respectable man of the crown. And they used penal legislation, propaganda to start vilifying pirates as evil. They were so brutal. If they caught one, they tortured these guys. And I really do blame the Bank of England as the reason for all of this. But it was capitalism that came in to say and said, no, you can't be like a pirate anymore. No, you need to be licensed. You need to be registered so they can bill you all the way down. So that was the difference at this point. You had now this time, you still had pirates that still existed. They were totally on the offshore. Oh, it says buffering or North says buffering. Does that mean my screen's buffering? If anyone's in the chat listening, if you can let me know if you can hear me or not. Hopefully my internet's okay. But they wanted to use, I just lost they were vilifying piracy, right? That's the big point. And they wanted to license and have all these people that they could, again, they get all the money. So you had these two groups. You had pirates who didn't give the crown jack squat, or you could be a Royal Navy admiral where you weren't a pirate, but you were a pirate. You just gave your winnings to the crown. So the Corsairs, they were done. That was a fancy name for pirate. They now became privateers, and they glorified, especially the British, they glorified the civilizing benefits of having the British imperialize your country. And, what's up, Millhouse? Dude, a long time no see. Dude, man, I hope you're doing well. But I just found it funny yet again. We have, America, they hate us for our freedom. They hate us for our democracies. Everyone in Vietnam, they want our democracy. They're dying. They're begging us to have it. The British did this just as much, if not more. And along with all these countries did, that they didn't want it to come across that they're just raping and pillaging these places. They need to say, no, we're here to help guide them into the new year, in the new century, help guide them to be as progressive as we are, as advanced as we are. Oh, sorry. Thirsty. Okay. But I just laughed. The civilizing, the privateers, they were glorified, unlike the pirates, because they brought the benefits of civilizing your country. But England, they had become a hierarchical society. They created a whole marginalized, we're bringing civilization to the unwashed masses. Exactly, dude. These people, they're so backwards. They hunt, they fish, they spend time with their family. We got to get them a job, dude. So we got to get them a job so they can vacation with their family and then go hunting and fishing when they're retired. That's the better alternative than just doing that as your means of survival. But in this time when we made the switch from the Corsairs, the privateers in England, the English society was changing drastically. And there was always a hierarchy, but now it became a very strict hierarchy. So you had this whole, bloodline was very important. Who are you marrying? What is your dowry size? What is your family like? Are they respectable? And it creates this whole marginalized group, much like our inner cities are today. And so they didn't have a lot of options, these people. They could go work maybe as like a sharecropper, or maybe they could be a slave somewhere, or they could become a pirate. And many of these disenfranchised people became pirates. And humans were just so predictable. We see the same thing in the hood, right? Like these disenfranchised people that don't see a way out. They turn, or maybe they don't know any better. They don't see anything else. They see successful people or the drug dealers or the gangsters, and they became gangsters. And it's the same thing that happened in 17th, 18th century England. Both, though, the privateers and the pirates, both were violent, both were torturous, both were nut jobs. And not to forget, 100 years earlier, the Corsairs were drawing maps, anthropological work. Like these Corsairs, these pirates, they'd be sent to these little islands in the Caribbean or whatever, these coastal towns, and they would go there under the guise of science experts, and they would return with all this information to the crown about what these people are like, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, how do they view of what is their religion, whatever. And what does that sound like to you? That sounds exactly like, to me, what the CIA had done from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Probably not so much anymore. They have the internet. They don't really need that. But the CIA used anthropologists and academics to go into countries to provide them intel, or they would sneak a CIA officer under the same credentials as these other people, as these actual scientists who maybe didn't really know what they were doing. And they were getting information just like back then. It's also so glamorized and romanticized. People see it as every easy money. Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. So Spain was allowed free reign the previous century as Britain focused on India. But with the joining of Scotland, like I said, the new century, British wanted to dip their toe into the Spain-like exploring. So privateers, they're still essentially pirates, but I talked about it. You have two classes: legal pirates who gave the percentage, and real pirates who kept it on. And the crown, did that stop them? Even though they vilified them, even though they prosecuted them, even though they tortured these pirates, do you think they hated them? No, they still used the pirates when the privateers weren't doing the job. It reminds me of Suicide Squad, and I haven't seen the movie, but I know the concept. It's like that DC movie where they take the criminals, like I think in the books, it's like the Joker, or comic books, like the Joker, Harley Quinn, all these people to commit acts that the U.S. government can't do. And this is exactly what yet the British Crown continued for till to this day, 600 years later. So in the 1600s, the British Empire came up with the idea, let's use criminals to further our agenda. And between the 16th and 18th century, it was Wild Wild West in the ocean, people. It was crazy. It was violent. It was just constant fighting. And I was thinking about this, dude. If you're on one of these wooden ships and you're fighting another wooden ship in the ocean who's got more guns or whatever, I mean, you can't be happy about this. You cannot be excited. I think I'd be terrified. Because what if they knock my ship down? What am I going to, I can't swim back. Like, and I'm sure that happened to hundreds of people where their ship was burned down. They had to jump in the water and they would just die. They would just be floating there. No helicopters coming and plausible deniability. Exactly, dude. No, that we don't know this part. We torture them. But I just found that funny. And I'm going to jump. I'm probably going to say, well, we'll just keep going. So, Sir Walter Raleigh and the treasure of El Dorado. So he's an unusual privateer. He financed his own expeditions with his personal fortune. He was also another one of the Virgin Queen Elizabeth I's favorite corsairs like Drake. And just like Drake, historians prefer to remember Raleigh and Drake as explorers, cartographers, colonists in service to the empire, not as these criminal-like pirate evil people, or not evil, but violent people. And wouldn't you know, well, we had Drake, we had Captain Kidd, we had Henry Morgan. They're all Freemasons and Templars. Now, what's Sir Raleigh and whose big claim to fame is lurking for El Dorado? Do we want to take a guess what he is? It says now I'm buffering. Damn, dude. Internet, man. They just don't want us to find out about these darn pirates. Hopefully it gets better, MacMan. But anyone, let me know if it gets really bad. Not that I can do anything, but I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. But I lost power today in where I'm located, because I work right down the road from where I live and everywhere shut down. So maybe that's why. But yes, so Sir Walter Raleigh, what's so special about him? Well, he is also linked to the Templars. He resided at one of the order offices while staying in France. Now, maybe that doesn't sound crazy, but he stayed in the secret society's house or lodge. Oh, good. Thank goodness it stopped, MacMan. Thank you. But you don't just invite random people to sleep at your secret society unless they're affiliated with your secret society. So again, what are the odds that all of these famous pirates that are supposedly explorers, what are the odds that they're all into the occult, they're all into secret societies, unless, again, there is more to this story than we're being told. There is no way that Christopher Columbus was the guy who discovered America in 1492. All of these pirates, I believe, were such good pirates because they had maps that the Templars had. And the point of their goal was to ruin the Catholic Church and to get away this wealth that they can steal from the Catholic Church to help build this utopia in the New World that they knew existed far beyond when Christopher Columbus discovered it. And I've heard, that's next episode, but the whole Columbus story, which we'll get into again, like I said, but I'm going to spoil it a little bit. Columbus was affiliated with, he was a Kabbalist, he was a secret society member. They used Columbus as a way to bring the New World into the public purview so it came like organically, looking like, even though the Templars knew that this land existed, they had been there with, we talked about Rosslyn Chapel last episode and how they had corn on their 3 pillars because they were Templar Knights. And then They became Freemasons, blah, blah, blah. They traveled to the New World. That's why they had corn on these pillars when corn wasn't discovered yet. And yeah, so all of these people, these explorers, all are doing this, in my mind, because they are members of secret society and they have access to maps that the public and regular sailors did not have access to. Because how do you become like this, this like amazing sailor, right? Like what makes them strategy? I mean, you have 5 ships sailing this huge ocean. What do you mean the strategy? Like how do you just keep sailing? You have zero clue where you're going. No. These people knew exactly where they were going because they had the maps, and they had these maps that were hidden for over. And we'll talk about soon how they got those maps. But so continuing why Sir Walter Raleigh is a Knights Templar. He helped the young Huguenot king of Navarre, Henry of Bourbon, in his aspirations to the French throne. And this Henry of Bourbon was a Huguenot. And what we already talked about, how the Huguenots are most likely Templars in disguise, or the top ones were. He was also Sir Walter Raleigh in Paris during the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in 1576, protecting the future King Henry. And I mean, he had to have known something about the Templar treasure. He left to go find a hidden Templar treasure. So obviously he stayed at the Templar house. He's protecting Templar people. He's sailing to find a Templar treasure. And that, not that legend couldn't have been heard from other people, but this is enough circumstantial evidence to prove clearly he has a relationship with this secret society. And just so we're clear, this is like 1576. So the Templars obviously do not technically exist in France anymore, but they're under the Huguenots. They're under the Cathars. You understand. They're just under different names. But to simple it up, it's the Templar Knights. So in 1595, though, he heard rumors about a secret place in the dense jungles of Guyana known as El Dorado. And he had no doubt that this was the Templar treasure. Sadly, he did not find it there. People speculate that he was lied to by the locals just to get to say, screw you, we hope you die in there. But back to the privateers and Queen. So new patriotic fervor was hitting the United Kingdom. They just combined with Scotland. They're going out in the world. They're rising up. Spain's dropping and England is rising. And many enlisted with the privateers to conquer and colonize and destroy the Spanish Empire, because there was a real hatred for Spain and Britain at this time. There was real hatred for France as well. They all hated each other, but they really hated Spain. And so it was this propaganda. So it got all these people to join the privateers. Again, is this anything new? No, we have the same exact thing today with whatever they want you to join, whether they want you to be an Antifa member, whether they want you to be a Proud Boy or whatever. Propaganda works. It's sad. We're all propagandized. I'm propagandized, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I found that like funny and interesting. But the British viewed essentially anyone else as inferior. If you weren't British, you were inferior, and they did what they pleased because you were less than. The treatment could be so bad, African slaves would escape slave colonies and become pirates. Because again, the pirates accepted everyone, which is a good thing. You should not judge people by their skin color, by their race, by their creed. Pirates were open to women, blacks. Everyone was treated equal. There were even women captains, who we talked about earlier. The women, if they were caught, the women pirates, they would pretend to be hostages of the pirates. And when the privateers would catch them, it wouldn't always work. But eventually, though, warships, they and merchantmen, they replaced the pirate ships and the Royal Navy, East and West. And they also, again, so now you went from Corsairs, privateers, to eventually you get the Royal Navy, the East and West India Trading Companies, and the Royal Society, and these officially dominate the seas, and pirates are literally pushed to the edge of the world. Black Caesar, notorious black pirate. They didn't go over that one, Skeptic. Interesting. Obviously that's great, right? Like they're ahead of their time. They accept everybody. But this they're like free loving commune utopia, sharing everything. It's exactly what the Templars were like as well. The Templars were big into orgies, big into sharing things, and not that you shouldn't share, but again, I'm just tying these links that these groups, why do they have these same beliefs? It's not because they heard an idea and they said, wow, that's a brilliant idea. All right, time to go rob a ship. No, it's because their leaders are members of these secret societies. So the Royal Society. Now we're getting really crazy here. So if you don't know the Royal Society, let me see if I have basically the Royal Society was this non-governmental organization dedicated to promoting, furthering scientific research, basically running the imperial project operation. And this relates heavily to our story, not totally pirate related though. But the Royal Society, they'd send out, so this continues this British idea of sending experts to your areas. So the Royal Society, let me just see when the Royal Society starts. So we got a time period. The Royal Society, 1660. Okay, so 1700s is when the Royal Society really starts kicking in. And they're the ones that help bring out Freemasonry as well. Totally coincidentally, I'm sure. But the Royal Society, they would send out, quote unquote, listen to this. Now, just tell me what this sounds like to you. So the Royal Society, they're a bunch of rich, smart experts, okay, powerful people in Britain. They start sending out, quote unquote, explorers and experts to wherever Great Britain needed information on territories that it intended to raise or to civilize, aka to conquer, to enslave. But the Royal Society, they're big on, these scientists, they have hearts of gold. Though, no, they don't believe in Christian morals. They believe in science, which is even more moral, okay? So the Royal Society, they would fund these expeditions, and under the cloak of science, they would send geographers, surveyors, cartographers, botanists, meteorologists, other specialists, all sent abroad and financed by the Royal Society, who would then provide that data to the colonial empire and obviously got paid for it. This sounds like to me like any algorithmic, like what was the thing that that they say that caused Cambridge Analytica or whatever you want to, the Red Cross, USAID, all these organizations are exactly what the Royal Society is. They're doing the exact same things. They pick, like I know I've told this story so many times, but the Red Cross, it got its beginning during the Bolshevik Revolution. This lady, supposedly she felt bad. They're starving. These poor Bolsheviks, they're starving because they slaughtered everybody and they slaughtered all the farmers that were actually farming. They have no food. Well, let's send some people there to help, right? So the Red Cross, she's the daughter of some rich guy. It's $1 million donation. The first wave of people go to help the poor Bolshevik Russia. 32 of them. 32 people. Now, if you're helping a starving country and you're sending 32 people, you send doctors, you send nurses, you send maybe farmers. I don't know. You send people that can aid in the hunger. Do you send bankers? Do you send lawyers? Do you send industrialists? No, unless the Red Cross didn't really care about helping and was more doing it to get contracts and spy. Well, this is exactly what the Royal Society was doing. And to finish that Red Cross story, 32 of the original first Red Cross wave, 29 were lawyers, politicians, industrialists. Three of those people. One was a doctor, 2 nurses. Doctor left after 2 weeks because he realized they lied to me. I am not helping anybody. They're off doing God knows what, and I can't help anybody. But just again, and so I also found this funny was because the Royal Society, like I said, they're sending spies under the cover of science and quote unquote experts. MI6 is one of the old Britain's intelligence organization. MI6 is one of the oldest running, if not the oldest, continually running intelligence organizations that still exist on this planet. And MI6, they taught the U.S. They had an office next to in the OSS building, OSS office room. They were the bottom floor or top floor of them. They built the OSS for the United States. They got Wild Bill Donovan. They trained him what to do. They told him how you do this, how you spy. And so there's one guy, I think his name's Richard Grove, and I haven't listened to any of his stuff. Maybe you guys have. I'd love your take on it in the comments if you have listened to him. But he says this thing about the British Empire still controlling the world or still controls America. I don't know if I can believe that, go that far, but I can believe, and I'm sure he talks about this, that the CIA is an offshoot of the MI6. It absolutely is, whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not. MI6 created the OSS. They helped create the CIA. Do you think they said, well, our work is done here, we're going to let this go? When the CIA when they created the Korean CIA, the KCIA, do you think they said, here you go, we helped you build it, good luck? No, they put moles in, they bugged the rooms, they did all these things to monitor, to make sure that everything was going well. And Truth and Doubt, thank you. Thank you for that. Can't read that, but thank you. Thank you, Truth. So that's interesting. He seems very well read, and I think that's an interesting idea. And like I said, I don't totally disagree with that. That could definitely be possible, but yeah, okay. So MI6. So it's just, again, that's in the 1700s, they're using scientists, today's anthropologists, to study native populations on the best way to take over them. We did this in Vietnam. We did this in, countless places. In Vietnam with Operation Phoenix, they studied the local populations. They knew what they were afraid of. Like in the Philippines, Colonel Lansdale, there was a Filipino civil war. Communists were trying to take over. Lansdale kind of led this charge in fighting them back. And his units, he called them, he said he would slit their grandmother's throat for 2 cents. He found out that this is the story. So he wanted these Filipino village to go hunt the communist Filipinos hiding in the forest, whatever. And they won't do it. They're afraid of them because they're very violent. So Lansdale, he knows there's this urban legend there that there's vampires, and the vampires they're out. They attack children that are walking alone or something like that. So what he does is he steals one of the members of that won't go searching for the communists. He goes on a walk to get his water or food or whatever. Lansdale's men kidnap him, drain him of his blood, poke 2 holes in his neck like a vampire, and leave the body to be found by the village. And this then encourages them to go hunt out the communists. So these tactics been around for 400 years, 300 years. This using science as a backdrop to manipulate and take over. Oh, damn. Ackman says that Richard Guy's a 15-hour podcast on Iran-Contra. Holy shit, dude. That's a long show. Yeah, I like that topic, but sorry. For people listening, we run a loose show here. I like reading everyone. And so if you listen on podcasts, come join in the YouTube chat because, look, we're having so much fun. Truth and Doubt says, my favorite Richard Grove interviews are with Charlotte Isbert. I don't know her. And John Taylor Gatto. John Taylor Gatto, RIP. What an amazing guy. Awesome guy. If you guys haven't read John Taylor Gatto, he writes books on education, and they're amazing guys. But he brings up, and last thing before we go back to the Pirates, John Taylor Gatto in his book, the first one he wrote, I forget what it's called now, he talks about how the literacy rate in revolutionary America was almost 100%. After mandatory schooling, which I believe happens in the 1850s, maybe 1830s, the literacy rate immediately starts to dropping. And his point is, and he says it takes 100 hours for a young man or woman to learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic. As long as they want to learn, they can learn this in 100 hours. Well, what the hell are they doing in school? Why are we in school from 5 to 18? If the goal is supposedly to learn to read and write, you can do that in 100 hours. So what are they really doing? They're indoctrinating. And you guys know that, but Gatto just brings up a very good point. Mostly on Barry Seal, Barry Mackman. Have you guys ever read Barry and the Boys by, oh, come on. Who knows who the author is? I think he's on Twitter. Daniel Hopkins, something like that. Oh, she wrote Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. I'm going to have to check that out, guys. Charlotte Isbert. And what was the other book? Macman, you brought up. John D. Can you like DM that to me? Because I'm going to forget. All right. I'm sorry. I'm getting off. I'm just enjoying talking. You guys are like my friends, so I enjoy talking to you. So, all right, let's get back. Okay. So CIA, 1700s to today using science. So the Royal Society, well, we're taking a quick turn back. The Royal Society was also backing profitable voyages of James Cook, who passed as no, he's not a pirate. No, he is a explorer. Now, if you don't know James Cook, he's like this. I'm sure he was a great pirate or a great captain, but he was like not very intelligent. He was like kind of a brute. And so I'm like imagining, the Royal Society, like saying to whoever oh, he is an explorer. He's a cartographer. He's a brilliant man. We're going to fund him to go explore the world. And they look at it like this dumb as a rock, like brute. And they're like, what? So that's what they would do. They would lie and prop up people that they knew were going to be violent. They knew that they would do what they were told, and said, no, he's an explorer. Sure, he looks like he's part of a member of the Hells Angels. He's an explorer. He just has a funny style. Oh, free stuff on their internet or die with Skull and Bones. Oh boy. But so so this method of using experts and anthropologists in today's vocabulary, this continued even in the 18th century. And in the 18th century, the British had zero need for privateers, for corsairs. They didn't want pirate activity. They didn't want buccaneers, because why share the profits when your own military can do it for you? And so they expelled and replaced all of these loosely affiliated with the crown people with commanders who acted with equal or greater cruelty. Okay, the Order of the Temple and Freemasonry. So this author, as the previous author, Nesta, Helen Webster, and now me, both think the Templars established Freemasonry as a cover, as an instrument for continuing its activities, or at least infiltrated Freemasonry when they inspired all the Gothic architecture that was taking over Europe. So this is the origins of Freemasonry. Oh, the Hawaiian. Oh, wait, here. Gentleman skeptic, he's a Hawaiian, so we can definitely, and I know so little about Captain Cook skeptic, so I probably, like what I said could have been, I just, take the notes. The Hawaiians hate Captain Cook. Let's just, everybody, we all need to learn things. Let's look it up. Captain Cook was born in 1728, died in 1779. He's a famous British explorer, navigator, cartographer. See, even Wikipedia does it. They lie. And let's just see why he hate. Oh, here it is. He was attacked and killed in 1779 during his third exploratory voyage in the Pacific. When I explore places, I always like to kidnap the ruling chief. And James Cook, he's an explorer, but he likes to kidnap. It goes hand in hand. I don't know if you guys knew this. When you explore new lands, you always kidnap the current king or crown of these little islands. So, oh my gosh, I'm just reading his Wikipedia. Whilst there is controversy over Cook's role as a neighbor of colonialism and the violence associated with his contacts with indigenous peoples, he left a legacy of scientific and geographical knowledge. So it's just funny, right? Like if you think back of all those names of the pirates we talked about today, or privateers, corsairs, we're just going to call them pirates. We don't think of them as these violent thieves. We think of them as explorers, just like James Cook. History is written by, but then if we go back in history and we ask, who was Napoleon? How about Andrew Jackson? Which it is always surprised me why AJ made it on the 20. He was a Freemason. That's my only down thing about Andrew Jackson. But all these people that were if they're nationalistic, if they don't like banks, history will destroy you. And it's just funny that these guys were actually evil Oh, Skeptic said they didn't hate Cook, they ate him, or they didn't just hate him, they ate him. Good for them, dude. Good for them. He deserved to be eaten. You know, if you kidnap a king or a chief, you deserve to get eaten, dude. Kind of like that Rockefeller. Who was the weird Rockefeller that went to like New Zealand or Papua New Guinea because he liked hanging out with them? And there's that video of him like dancing with them, and then he eventually gets cannibalized. You deserve it, dude. You freaking deserve it. Why are you doing that? They don't want you there. Would you want you there? Your family probably doesn't even want you there. But these random people that have no ties to you want, no, don't, just stop. Just stop. And I was also thinking about this book and piracy and the Templars. The Templars were the first like central banking. They were committing usury and all these horrible things in Europe when that was banned. Couldn't do that as Christians because it's evil and disgusting. And they really promoted this globalization of trade. Now, I know it's not the same globalization that we have today. They were getting new spices and exploring, blah, 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 blah. But I can't help but see these similarities between the communistic globalist of today and the communistic globalistic Templars of the past. Is it possible that their belief set from this Babylonian Canaanite belief set has grown all the way since that time? I don't know. Gravy says there's footage of Michael Rockefeller living with them 20 years later. Crazy story. I know. He wasn't there for 20 years though, was he, Gravy? I thought he was like, he went there and back a few times. He wasn't there like 20. He wasn't there 20 years, right? All right. So the beginning of how does pirates, Templarism, Freemasonry, and let's tie this all together here. So the origins of Freemasonry, this you will get a million different answers and a million different reasons, responses, and you can believe whatever you want to believe. I don't know what I believe. I don't know if I have yes, please link it to me, buddy. And yes, on the Twitter world, because I won't remember anything in this chat right when I close this. But so the facts we do know, right? So 1717, the Grand Lodge of London they started. And now the Freemasons of the years past, same folk, different time. Love it, truth and doubt. Beautiful. That's it. That's nice. Same folk, different time. But so Freemasons, this was the Freemasonry that we know today in 1717. But the Freemasons of years past were a respected group because of their great talents. They were the object of envy. They're almost like magicians. I mean, imagine, guys, in 1300s seeing this beautiful dome or arch and stonework that could never be duplicated, that can't even be duplicated today, but it was groundbreaking. And these builders that do it, you're going to feel nothing but admiration, respect, awe. And so they are like celebrities of a sort. They are admired. And this is the era of the cathedrals. Medieval cathedral builders, aka Masons, there's normal. Why did they form a secret society if they're not really evil? Well, there's plenty of logical, reasonable reasons why the cathedral builders, the Masons, started Masonic lodges. These lodges originate nothing esoteric, nothing occult-like. They were simply huts or lodges put up around the cathedrals that they were building. And as time went on, these conversations in the lodges began to take place that talked about protecting the professional knowledge of the Masons and from infiltration, from certain apprentices, from passing themselves off as experts. I mean, it's really this group, the medieval Freemasons were just a union, a modern day union. And as time went on, conversations kept growing. They started creating brotherly guilds whose purpose was to monitor the quality of work, monitor the expertise for which people were hired for certain jobs, to ensure patrons paid for the good labor, and to make sure conditions was okay working conditions, blah, blah, blah. So this is why these medieval Freemasonic lodges really start. It's to protect the guys building these temples. It's a modern day teachers union, if you will. Other artisans formed similar societies, but the stone workers, why do we remember? Why does everyone? Well, because they use that name in Freemasonry, but why don't you know about the Guild of Glassmakers? Well, because the stone masons, these medieval cathedral builders, they were the the most rigid, strict, and they, along with all of those things, they actually they kept their secrets. They weren't blabbing them out, pillow talking to the prostitute that they hired after payday. And their secret, this was their living, dude. If you start telling everybody, hey, building that dome is actually a lot if you just do this, no, then you're not going to get paid as much. So they wanted to maintain their wealth and their power and their prestige. So this is why they created their guilds. And also French magonnaire also means, that's my French accent, magonnaire, fun game for you guys to play. If you haven't, I have a list. Did I bring this up already? I have a running list of French words that we use every day. And there's just the French have a word for everything. We don't talk about the glass blowers. They're even more evil skeptic than the Freemasons. I'll tell you all about the glass blowers. And if you think they're bad, just wait till you hear about the carpet makers. I'm trying to make a joke. I'm trying to think of old medieval things. Carpets. All right, let's continue. We're almost done anyway. But we talked about, so the French word magonner, which was where they got the word mason from, it also means to block off. So something that a group that wished to remain hidden or occult might have adopted as a metaphor, that you can see why they use this phrase. So we talked last episode how the Templars most likely infiltrated Freemasonries through the Scotland and the Roslin Chapel, Robert the Bruce. And if you guys don't remember this story, very briefly again, I've said this, but I feel bad because some people are newbies and I don't want to overwhelm you. King Philip, when he kicks the Templars out of France in 1308, Friday the 13th, their fleet goes missing, go all over, treasure, blah, blah, blah. They become pirates. These are all the pirates that we just talked about, but some of them went to Scotland. And this was before Scotland and England became the United Kingdom. And Robert the Bruce was fighting England. He had like 12,000 forces versus England's 20,000. They're getting the crap kicked out of them. And then these white sails with red crosses. Who else had a white sail with a red cross? Oh, that's right. Christopher Columbus. That's so weird. But so they see the emblems, and the English they cowtail and run. And this is how the Roslin Chapel, they were a Templar family. They were in Scotland. They got given land. Freemasonry grows out of that. But there are documents and anyway. So that's like the factual stuff that we can prove that are documents, letters, whatever. But here's the mythical origins of Freemasonry. And I wrote this down because I did find it pretty interesting, and I didn't hear some of this stuff, so maybe you guys will like this. So the prehistoric and megalithic cultures were the first to build monuments of stone, thus the origin of the first stoneworkers. And one possible theory, and the ancient alien theory we've heard about so many times. How did these primitive communities have this elaborate knowledges of certain sciences that they were able to build and create these amazing things that we aren't even as accurate today, like calendars or Stonehenge or the Pyramid of Giza or whatever the Mayan temples? How did they build these things? These people are sacrificing, cannibalizing, doing evil. How do they build these things? And so the theory, this mythical origin of Freemasonry was that perhaps this knowledge was inherited from the antediluvian civilizations like Atlantis or the Templars, Arcadia. So supposedly, this is going to be, again, this is just a theory. You cannot prove it. If anyone says it's fact, they're lying because you can't prove it. But I do find it, I think it's a fair guess. So they established this hermetic caste system to study the celestial movements, hence their amazing ability on calendars and time and star movements. And this cast of priestly scientists, what do we have today? And just so, like, we'll just pick the Mayas, for example. Their calendar, their ceremonies, their buildings, their society is ran by these priestly scientists. And what are we gravitating towards today? Are we gravitating toward a more theocratical society, or trust the experts, worship Fauci, bow down to him in the temple of science? It's the same exact thing. They are really bringing us back into this antediluvian goal, or this ancient goal where we are all dumb, dumbed down, animalistic, do whatever they say while they rule the world. But so these priestly scientists, they built various observatories out of stone, like Stonehenge, and to make sure not duplicated, they had to make the stone workers into their alliance. And so the Book of Enoch, have any of you? I bet Sir Tim of the Tunnels read the Book of Enoch, and maybe Gravy, a few other you guys. But I don't know if you've ever read the Book of Enoch. I have not. But the Book of Enoch was found among the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it explains the principles. I had no idea it did this. So this blew my mind. So in the Book of Enoch, it explains the principles used by the stone observatories, calling them Uriel's machines. And it is also known that Masonic lodges are considered authentic, attribute their origin to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Regardless, these megalithic priests predicted a collision, and this is in Enoch again. These megalithic prehistoric priests, science priests, they predicted a collision of a comet with Earth in 3150 BC. They emigrate east, these priestly, esoteric, hermetic, Canaanite, devil-worshipping, illuminated people. They emigrate east, taking their secret knowledge with them. And this is why, all of the esoteric wisdom comes from the east, okay, because of this belief. And so the Book of Enoch tells us then the comet collides with Earth, causing the great deluge on our planet. Many of the stone workers, because they were buddies with these priests, they were able to survive the cataclysm, and they preserve their occult knowledge and impart it to the descendants of Noah. And from this, you get, again, all in the Book of Enoch. So I got to read this because this is fascinating. There is this, after Noah, there's this in Rome, 70 AD, there's this cult. Well, but 70 AD, around about. It's called the Zadokite cult. And they combined antediluvian wisdom with the lineage of King David. And the Romans had expelled the Zadokite priest in 70 AD. The priests buried their documents, their relics, all beneath the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. Dun, dun, dun. The descendants of these precursors of now who's involved with the Temple of Solomon? So this hidden antediluvian wisdom, knowledge, everything that this kind of evil stuff that God's keeping from you to keep you stupid is what these Gnostics and Templars would probably say. Well, the Zodiac cult, they have all this information from pre-flood. They bury it under the Temple of Solomon. And who 1,000 years later digs up and gets to live near the Temple of Solomon? The Knights Templar. And that was how they got all these maps, all this wisdom, all this stuff. And so the Templars, those 9 guys, these 9 knights that stayed behind and found this stuff, Hugh de Payne's, all those people, they say, let's reestablish the age-old Masonic Brotherhood. All that was required was that the order be prohibited and persecuted, just like the Zadokites before them, just like these priests before that. Freemasonry has tons of symbols and engravings related to the construction of Temple of Solomon in 945 BC by the stoneworkers of Tyre. And some authors even say this means the Masonic Brotherhood goes back to Phoenician sects that guarded the secrets of the stone construction that they received from the antediluvian, pre-diluvian, or pre-flood era. So stoneworking has been special in all these days, followed by, in Phoenicia, Greece, Rome, Egypt. And Egypt, this was fascinating. Egypt represents the virtues of trust and justice with a carpenter's square. So Egypt represents trust and justice with a carpenter's square. Who else has a carpenter's square? Oh, it's the instrument used with a compass that forms the universal symbol of Masonic lodges. Confucius around 500 BC spoke of goodness of acting squarely, along with Aristotle, 2 thinkers. Now, I'm not saying that these guys are all in part of this secret pre-flood Canaanite religion, but I find that very odd to act squarely. It wasn't a common phrase in those days as well. I do find that interesting, don't you guys? The Knights Templar, aka poor fellow soldiers of Christ, and the Temple of Solomon. Exactly, dude. That name's so, such liars, the poor soldiers of Christ. Ugh. Maybe in the beginning, guys, not by the end. And the British connection as well with the mythical origins of Freemasonry. Once King Athelstan of England subjugated other smallish British kingdoms, he brought together all the skilled stoneworkers to establish the Masonic Rite of York in 926 AD. And this document permitted the stoneworkers to meet once a year to authorize and oversee construction of numerous abbeys, castles, and fortifications. This is proven in the Regis and Cook manuscripts. There's a story behind them, but we'll ignore that for now. And also incontestable evidence, the Masonic lodges operated in Scotland after 1057 and after 1220 in England after Athelstan. And their function was to provide responsible and effective stoneworkers. And they did this because in this era, travel, except for king, church, was resisted in England. They don't want you overthrowing the newly created government. And the Masons, they had to devise their own methods of recognizing each other to avoid the deception when moving from one place to the next. And that's why they always had to walk two or more at a time. So now who else travels at two or more at a time, or who shares horses, who is always with a brotherhood? The Templars. So that's the show tonight. So I just want to I want to go over real quick like what we said. I just did the mythical origins of Freemasonry as just like a fun thing because that was a chapter in the book. But what it sounds like to me is like that this pre-flood era, the Watchers or the Nephilim, they had this special knowledge. They shared this knowledge. These people started building these stone things. The flood happens. Some of these people are able to hide, escape, whatever, and that knowledge survives. It gets passed on to ends up in Rome. It ends up in Egypt. It ends up in Phoenicia, and they eventually bury this material because they're being ran after under the Temple of Solomon, which is found by the Templars. And we start over again. The Templars become pirates. Pirates are exploring the world looking for this Atlantis-like era. Pirates give birth to Freemasonry, give birth to Francis Bacon, creates Rosicrucianism. So in next episode, we're going to go into Christopher Columbus, and it's really going to that's going to be the best episode of the bunch, in my opinion, because it proves without a doubt that these pirates, they're not explorers. They're members of a secret society, and their goal, their exploration wasn't just to find new land. It wasn't just for riches. It was for some occult belief that the new world, America, that they knew had existed for hundreds of years, they were going to make their new pinnacle utopia there. And their utopias are communistic. They're leaderless in a way, or I guess everyone in the public is the same level. Debauchery, degeneracy, sodomy. The Templars, they were shown as they would always share their horse, just like these Freemasons in the 900s. They always walked two or more. And the Templars said they did it because they were poor. They weren't poor, but they most likely did it because they were, two guys, you got it. So it's just, the more I read these books, the more I am convinced that there is some esoteric hidden knowledge that has been passed from these demons, these fallen angels to the public to try and, so you recreate this golden age where they ruled, wherever they had the power on earth, where we were all unaware of Christ and we were cannibalizing, pedophilia, blah, 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 all these horrible, horrible things like the Canaanites. And they're trying to bring that back. And that's the Templars, the Freemasons, all these secret societies. They're really the same group, just different names. And they have this hidden knowledge, and they're slowly chipping away, getting back to their goal. Because all of these groups, all these secret societies, all these things, I wonder how they decided who was riding bitch. That's a good question, dude. I guess if you're the giver or the taker, that's where your position is on the horse. But there's something here, dude. There's something here, that there is hidden knowledge that these elites are keeping, and their goal is to bring this horrible communistic degenerate society, and where they have you only act on your carnal desires, and that's it. Yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks, Truth and Doubt. I appreciate it. Tomorrow, there's evidence of giants doing stonework in America. I try to get a book, Truth. If you have one, can you I don't know your Twitter handle. Please DM me though, dude. And who else told me that other book? Something John D book. I'll have to look it up. But tomorrow I'll be going live, hopefully with Bob's lessons at 8:30. So hopefully that works out. And we'll be doing part 3 of this. We'll finish the story next week. And I'm almost done with my other book on how oil, and I know we all know this, but this book proves without a doubt that oil is a self-replenishing commodity. It's a lie. And if it really was this limited product, then their theories don't make any sense. They don't work. They don't work at all. And so it's by Jerome Corsi. He also writes a global warming book. So that's a really good book. So we'll finish this next week. We'll work on that. And I got Bob tomorrow. And I think that's it, guys. So I'm Jack Allen. I hope you enjoyed the Rockwall, Texas. Thanks, Truth. I know. Thank you. But I'll have to, I don't know what I was going to say. Oh, go follow me. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm at Kojak Podcast, and we'll be live tomorrow at 8:30, hopefully with Bob. We'll be live with somebody if Bob can't do it. But so far, he's going to be there. So I hope to see you guys there. We'll have a fun show tomorrow. Hope you learned something. Hope you think a little differently about our boys. And we'll talk soon, everybody. God bless. Much love. Thanks, everybody. See ya.